Welcome or welcome back, everybody, to another exciting episode of Aaron's Opinion, the podcast for blind people, where we speak about critical issues in the blindness community and all other issues from across the universe and galaxy. This evening, we have the pleasure to be joined by Geno Marks. I was very endeared and amused when you told me just the other day that, as far as you're concerned, your life is not that exciting. Well, I disagree. Your life is very exciting, and I care. So why don't you highlight your entertaining life and how it all ended up in this beautiful situation where you are with this pilot thing that you want to make sure that the world knows about. So who's Geno Marks? Dive head first. Let's go.
Okay. Well, first of all, let me just say, Aaron, thank you for having me on.
You're always welcome.
And it's been a while since we first met, a few years ago, through Rebecca, which is our executive producer and my co-creator of the TV pilot. Let's see, I guess where to begin. Well, I grew up in the Midwest, and I had I did not have a typical childhood, I don't think. Um, but when I was, let's see, in sixth grade, I entered the Young Authors Contest, and by some miracle, beat out a lot of kids in different junior high, kids that were older than me, and this story that I wrote, I mean, I'm sure it was heavily inspired by like Star Wars and everything at the time. And I think my mother still has it in the house. But I guess that was kind of the first thing that kind of made me really go, okay, one day I want to be a screenwriter. Um, and I grew up fascinated by movies, not so much television actually, which is interesting that I've now done a TV pilot because I never even really used to watch television because I couldn't stand commercials. um, but yeah, I ended up moving to Los Angeles in my 20s and was trying to pursue this crazy dream that a lot of people pursue of being in the film industry. Started out in post production, so I did a lot of editing and was trying to teach myself visual effects and stuff like that. But I always was a writer, and I guess maybe about 14, 15 years ago, through a friend, a neighbor, I ended up becoming part of a professional writing group. And that really just kind of set me on this path, where I just started taking it more seriously. I wanted to hone my craft, wanted to be a really good writer. And then, fast forward to just, 4 or 5 years ago, shortly before I met you, I ended up meeting Rebecca, very kind of strange circumstance. I was diagnosed with an autoimmune disease and, was struggling with work and different things. And I ended up, driving, non-emergency medical transport. And, one day I pick up Rebecca and her sister, and she hops in the car, and I see her white cane, and we get to talking, and she asked me, what do you do? And I said, what do you mean? She's like, well, people that drive, these services, because she takes those services a lot. She goes, generally they're moonlighting or they're, filling in the gaps, which is what I was doing. And I said, well, once upon a time I was basically, chasing a dream of being a filmmaker, made a short film, got involved in all aspects of film. And she said, my life would make a great movie. And I've heard this before. When you tell people that you do anything in the film industry, the first thing they say is, "Oh yeah, my life would make a great movie." And sure enough, she'd actually written a book about her experience. And so I ended up reading her book, and and it was quite sad, the experience she had. And that's kind of how my relationship with Rebecca started, and how I started working with her, and it became the gateway for me into the blind community, into the low vision blind community. And I'm just really grateful. It's like I have a lot of friends now in this community, and really enjoy everything I've gotten to do. So.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I've read several of Rebecca's books too. I haven't known Rebecca too much longer than you have, really. Just around that same
Hmm.
time, a couple years back, yeah, I read the books, and I also agree with you. I found it all to be very sad and very frustrating as a successful blind person to hear all of that and to hear the whole
Hmm.
story.
Yeah.
I also think at some spiritual, because I'm not, by the way, I'm not religious, but I am spiritual and philosophical when it fits in. I think that sometimes everybody's life is a journey, and I think that is true for all of our lives, including Rebecca's life. I think these things in some way happened and lined up because that's her journey in life, to have this whole crazy experience, to
Yeah.
to some extent, you know. But absolutely. And then so yeah. So it's really, really fascinating. So are you able to share with me? I don't know if you can share it or not. Are you able to share with me before we dig into Don't Look Now? What I was also aware of before Don't Look Now came up was that perhaps you were working on another film about Rebecca's life. Are you able to speak on that matter at all?
Well, I mean, we've been trying for a couple years now to get that. The project is called Blue Butterfly. And so, the industry, first we got hit with COVID, right?
Sure.
And then we got hit with the strikes, the Writers Guild, the Screen Actors Guild. Um, so I think, it made it very challenging to raise the funds we needed for that project. I still believe in this project as does Becca, um, because it is a fascinating story, what happened to her. And I would recommend that people read her book. Her first book is called Because You're Blind. The screenplay that I wrote is not actually based on the book. It's more inspired by her life and inspired by her trials. She fought an unconstitutional guardianship for 15 years to free herself. So, um, yeah, I definitely still believe in it. Um, but right now, we're entirely focused on Don't Look Now. Don't Look Now was within our reach. It was, Becca came to me and had this idea as like, what if we did, a TV show, set, at a blind immersion training facility. And I've been to some of these schools over the years and knew a lot of people, and I thought about it, and I was like, yeah, there's something here. But I knew I wanted to do it as a comedy. Now that is a challenge in and of itself because I think people's first thought is, what do you mean you're going to make a comedy about low vision blind people, right? They think you're going to do something that's insulting, and you have blind people bumping into walls and nonsense like that. And we did not do that. I treated it like really it's the personality conflicts that people have, and that's true of like no matter what job or where you work, and that's where I think all of our comedy comes from is just how these people interact. They just happen to all have that similarity that they are low vision and blind. So,
Yeah, yeah. So before we dig into the actual elements of the YouTube video and the pilot, and I've asked other screenwriters this because I'm fascinated by the process. So, what is the process that you, Geno, go through to actually write a pilot in this case, or to even write a screenplay? How do all those
hmm,
ingredients fit together? Because it's not quite that simple. There's a lot of ingredients. So, what are the ingredients that go through your mind when you set all this up?
okay. Yeah, no, it's a great question. Um, I think when I started out, I 15, 20 years ago, I read all the wrong books and I just kind of was doing all the wrong things, as a lot of people do in, I think, any creative endeavor. So I think everything I was doing way back was all plot driven, right? I mean, it's the easiest thing to get through a script where you can plot out scenes and, oh, this is a cool scene. Oh, this is a great action scene or whatever it is. Um, but working with my mentor and my writing group, um, which is called Twin Bridges, um, I really learned probably the two biggest things for me that my mentor always honed in on with me is A, you have to write to the pain. You have to dig really deep into the most painful aspects of character. And obviously that brings us to the second one, which is it is all about character. Plot will handle itself if you're doing a good job writing the character. Um, so I guess my process whenever I sit down to figure out a script is, well, who are the characters? Who's my main character? Who are my secondary characters? Why should anybody care about this main character, right? What drives this person? What is haunting this person? And you have to make them three dimensional. You have to make it feel, um, real. And look, there's so many different, and I'm not going to call, they're not cliche, but there's a lot of different sayings about screenwriting. One of which is show me, don't tell me. That's kind of an interesting thing to talk about when you're low vision or blind. Okay. Um, because the experience is very different. The experience is obviously what you're hearing. Um, but film is a visual art form, right? And I think that is the tricky thing, even with what we did with Don't Look Now, um, because there are so many elements, there's so many little nuances that even actors bring to a performance, where it is not spoken, expressions and, body language and different stuff. Um, but as a writer, you're trying to do that. You're trying to achieve that on the page, where if I hand you, Aaron, a script and you're reading it or having it narrated to you, you're kind of imagining this stuff in your mind, right? And if I've done a good job and I'm painting the right picture for you, then I think it will find its audience and it will resonate. So hopefully that explains a little bit.
It does. And that's why I liked it because that's why I enjoyed the pilot so much because I was able to relate to the characters. As I mentioned,
Mhm.
now, do you want to run through? Why don't we do a little bit of a character sketch? Now, some of these people, as we were speaking over the phone, some of these people, I have never met any of them, obviously, in real life, but
Mhm.
I've interviewed two of them. I think two of them for sure, Rebecca and, Olga.
Mhm.
But the other cast, well, why don't you, if someone asks you, so Gino, who are all these blind people in this visa school thing? Why don't you kind of break down some of these different character personalities and explain to us a little scope of who all these people are, if you like?
Yeah. Well, we have a very diverse cast, number one. Um, and part of that was definitely intentional, but there were so many just happy accidents in the casting process. Um, so the show centers, well, our main window into the show is a character named CJ, Carlos Juan Gutierrez, and he is kind of, I guess you could say, like business manager or facilities director. Kind of runs the school, and the show. First of all, the format of the show is done very similar to shows like The Office or Abbott Elementary.
Yes. When
Uh,
I got didn't mean to just interject. When I watched
no, go
it,
ahead.
I felt The Office, but blind people.
Hmm.
That's exactly
Yeah,
the first flavor that just came into my mind instantly when I was watching. I was like, wait a minute, my parents watch this, but no, they watch The Office. Like it had
yeah,
that like flavor. It had that
right.
Office tone. It definitely does. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Well, and that was, I mean, it's definitely by design, because when I was trying to figure out the story I wanted to tell, and a pilot it's just a window into the series, right? You can't focus on every character. You can only focus on a few characters. And I've obviously studied a lot of different TV pilots. Um, so I knew that I had to have like the right format for us to do a show like this. The Office, Abbott Elementary, Modern Family, Trailer Park Boys, like these are all very successful shows. So there's something familiar for a studio to latch onto is, okay, we get this format and it's a successful format. But obviously this show is really unique in because no one's ever seen this world. No one has ever seen a show centered on, about, made with like it just the amount of blind professionals that we had involved. Um, so that was why I said, okay, if I'm going to do this, um, I need to figure out the right format, right structure, right way to go about this. And I think there was something humorously ironic to me of having a format like this for this environment, okay? Because these characters can't actually see the camera, and yet they're being interviewed head on at the camera. And there are even, some little funny moments of what is a concept called breaking the fourth wall. So in the case of CJ, there are times where even though he should not know where the camera is, he may turn in a way and acknowledge the camera crew. And for me, those are funny moments that are clearly meant for the sighted audience because you're kind of going, wait, he's blind. Why is he kind of looking in this direction and smiling and kind of reacting to the things that are going on? But I digress a little bit. So back to the characters. I obviously wanted to have a well-rounded cast, spent a lot of time with the schools. So in this case, I had kind of a list in my mind, right? Like, okay, we got to show the ILS teacher, we got to show the tech teacher, perhaps O&M, so there were all these different roles that I knew existed in these schools. Um, and then it was also about, well, okay, we're doing a show that needs to focus on a specific group that are going to be recurring characters, right? So I was instantly going, well, I can't make a show if I want the show to go 9, 10 years. I can't make a show that's about all the students because the students are going to learn, go through all their training, and they're going to move on and have successful lives. And then what do? You have these characters people like, but it wouldn't make sense that they're going to sit around for, a decade, always going to the school, right? Unless their character grows in that way that maybe they become a teacher or staff member. So I did want to create a very specific character, which is Anya. Um, if CJ is our window into the world of the show and the staff and kind of the daily machinations of what it is, what a blind immersion training facility actually is, then Anya is the window for the audience of what it is to actually lose your vision, because her character has been recently diagnosed with RP. And so she is, the intention is that she would actually be steadily going blind throughout the series. And so by the time the show, let's say, would end, she would actually be fully blind. So, and I thought that was just, it was just another kind of interesting angle to dig into kind of Rebecca and my goal with this show is that every episode we're teaching the sighted world aspects about the blind community, and we're also kind of breaking down misconceptions about the blind community.
Absolutely. And Anya, you certainly are speaking about the character played by Olga Mahler, certainly.
No, Olga plays the Braille teacher. Olga plays.
Olga. Oh, that's right, Olga. Okay, so when you wrote her in, you just wrote Olga as Olga, right? Because I forgot some characters you changed their real name to the actor name, but in some cases you kept obviously Rebecca as Rebecca, Olga as Olga, right? Yeah.
Well, that actually wasn't the case intentionally. The script, Olga's character was written. The character's name was Allison.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but just through a series of machinations and dealing with casting and dealing with the unions and just some of the kind of behind the scenes stuff that has to happen when you're putting a project together. Um, and Olga has very specific personality. I mean, the character was written similarly in the sense that I had always envisioned her to be perhaps European and speak with an accent. Um, but yeah, what Olga herself brought to it, no, it definitely was just kind of something that evolved during our pre-production process. And similarly with Becca, you know, it ended up being more as a cameo of herself because she is playing a student and she has been a student. Um, but without getting into some of the other technical things of dealing with the Screen Actors Guild, there were some logistic reasons of why we did that for those two characters. But yeah, that's not who those characters started out as. And so actually Becca's character originally was named Gretch, based on one of the characters in her book, which
Gretch the
the
Wretch. Yeah.
yes, you've read it. And that scene actually takes place, obviously a little bit differently, but that was the inspiration for Becca's scene. Is we thought it would be really fun to, kind of like an Easter egg. We're folding in something from one of her books. So I think that turned out really good. But yeah, Anya is the young kind of Gen Z millennial social media influencer that
Ah,
we meet in the show.
the one who like starts doing an Instagram live,
Yes.
pretending and getting her followers to watch her act while she's acting.
Yeah.
That person got it. Yes, that was
Right. Right.
that was really well done. That was. I mean, I hadn't seen it before. No pun intended.
Hmm.
That was weird. That was weird and good. Yeah. Hmm.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, I don't want to get into too many spoilers.
Right. Right. Interesting. And then there's also a very I was also entertained by the philosophy lesson and of course that comedian.
Oh yeah.
I got a
Well,
lot of
yeah. Well,
questions about
let's
him. My God.
sure. Well, let's dive. Yeah, we'll do a little bit of a dive into. I think we can go into kind of all the characters. Um, so obviously we've established CJ, and then Olga plays the Braille teacher. The character of Sam, played by Nathan Hurd. And well, by the way, CJ is played by a wonderful actor named Michael Galante. Anya is played by Michaeli Mina. We already know that Olga Itsenko plays Olga, and then Becca. Sam is the philosophy teacher, and you know Nathan is actually he's African American. He's albino, legally blind. He is a stand-up comic in his real profession, but he's also been in some really great TV shows. And it was just it was kismet, for us to be able to audition him. Uh, and I think he even told me, that when he read the character, he was like, "Wow, this is me. Like this is like it was written for him." And it definitely was in a sense. I mean, none of the characters are based on one particular person, right? Like they're just kind of amalgamations of different people that I know and friends with, and I think there's also a little bit of me kind of in every character. But then we also have Brian McCarthy plays the character Drew, which is he is the tech teacher. Brian has Leber's hereditary neuropathy, um, and then well, Deidre, the character of Deidre, that is she is based on a real person. She is based on a very dear friend of um, my wife and I, who passed away. She was
Oh.
sighted, and so it just it was a nice for me. It was just a nice way to honor her in into this character because. the real Deidre was this larger than life woman who just, she loved to cook and just made amazing food. And so I think that's why I really, I said, okay, I'm going to make, the blind version of Deidre is the ILS instructor. And that just kind of made a lot of sense to me. Um, and then, again, not moving in any particular order as far as appearance in the pilot, but then there's a really there's a really funny character, and I'm not entirely sure why I came up with this. Um, but there's a character called Billy, and he is played by Jamie Young, who is also has Leber's hereditary neuropathy, and so he is legally blind, but he's playing a sighted character. And Jamie was actually a producer on the project and also helped me as a casting director. Um, but yeah, Billy's kind of you know, I don't know. Maybe you could say he's kind of like the Kramer or something. He's just so out there as a character. He's this schleppy, just near do well. He lives in the maintenance closet of the building, which is just it's complete satire. It's complete farce. I mean, nobody would live in a maintenance closet.
He
Um,
come, but apparently he does. Because as we say, he just comes with the building. He's just part of the
yeah,
building.
he just is
He
part of
comes with it.
it.
You know,
Right.
I gotta tell you, when you mentioned that word Kramer, by the way, I gotta just can't resist by telling you this.
Yeah.
Obviously, I'm 33 years old, so my parents showed me Seinfeld. I saw every single show. Kramer is my favorite character. I am the Kramer. If there was someone I kid you not. If there was someone who would have the nerve and gall and guts to try out to audition and say, "Do you know I bring Kramer to Visa." His name's Aaron's
Yeah.
opinion. Nobody. I'm glad you said it, and I'm glad you're going to include a Kramer because if you aren't including a Kramer, I got to help you because we got to get that Kramer in there. We got to get that Cosmo. We got to get that in
Yeah.
there. You know.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, all the different
So,
noise. Yeah, so there's that
yeah.
person. That person, you could do so much with that. That person can play tricks. He can do all sorts of creepy stuff,
Oh,
funny
yeah.
stuff,
Well,
weird
I mean, that's the
stuff.
thing
Or yeah,
about his character is that he does do, I mean, again, I don't want to go into any spoilers that will ruin some of the very comedic moments for people that haven't seen the pilot, but he does get away with some really funny stuff, in the show. Um, he's always eating, number one. Um, but yeah, some of the other, I mean, I think if there's anything I am the most happy about with this whole show is that we do have just like every character is unique, right? And that kind of brings me to Hannah. Hannah Terrigan is such an amazing talent. I mean, everybody was so talented in this show, but she plays Thelma, who is like CJ's right hand administrative assistant, cited, and she is just, she's very like deadpan, not really, like not wanting to be there. It seems like she's over it. Like, maybe she's just worked in this job for a little too long. And so there's a lot of comedic moments that come from her character. And then we have Monty, played by Patrick Agata, and he is actually Anya's potential love interest that we set up right in the pilot. Um, and they have just this wonderful chemistry together. And he is just this. He's the silly, kind of harmless goof. He's the lovable goof. He kind of always says the wrong thing. Um, and then we have Anya's mom, which is Brenda, and she is, like the wealthy donor. She's a very, successful Indian businesswoman, trying to find the right school for her daughter. And last but certainly not least is the character of Joanne, played by the wonderful Diane Villegas, and she is kind of CJ's foil, if you will. You know, she's the CEO of the nonprofit, and kind of is there um, to kind of keep keep CJ from going off the rails, if you will, with all of his ideas. Um, so there's just, I think, a lot of wonderful interplay with all of these different characters. So yeah, I think that kind of covers it. I hope I didn't forget anybody.
I think you covered it. To rewind a little bit. So as you can
Yeah.
tell with me, with my vision, so I do have
Hmm.
usable vision, as you can see with my
Hmm.
glasses. And I have glaucoma, and a
Yeah.
congenital heart defect and other. I actually have. So the reason of my blindness is I actually have Peters anomaly syndrome. I don't know if that ever came up, but
Mm.
that's my thing. Very interesting. So you say though that if you're a blind person and you're watching the pilot, there's sort of things that we wouldn't pick up on. So,
Hmm.
how do you exactly write in, and what maybe can you sort of paint an example in my mind of something that I definitely missed during the pilot because I don't have enough vision to notice it? Or is that kind of hard to tell? But can
Yeah.
you try to paint one in where you can
Sure.
sort of demonstrate it?
Yeah, I can try to give some examples, and
Hmm.
we did have, as you know, the pilot audio described because we wanted to make every effort um, for the low vision blind community to be able to experience the show
Right.
in a good way, and that was tricky in and of itself because number one, I did not have a lot of experience with this myself. I think I've only listened to one or two things with audio description, and it was trying to strike that balance. The show is so dialogue heavy; it's very fast paced. There's a lot of stuff happening, and you don't want. I don't think, at least from the feedback from cast members when they were helping me figure out the right balance with our audio description team, uh, where it's just overly described, right? And there's just not even a single breath to kind of let a joke really sit and get people to experience that. So when it came to writing this, it was writing this fine line of having enough comedy that the blind audience would get, and that relatability to them, but having enough things for the sighted audience, because there may be jokes that you find funny because it's so relatable, but a sighted person may not get that, almost like a little inside joke, in the community, right? So it was trying to come up with, some other stuff that, the sighted audience might find humorous. So for instance, one of these things, um, that I guess I could talk about, it's just a minor thing, but it goes back to what I was saying about breaking that fourth wall. And there's a moment where CJ reacts and he actually turns and he's got this expression on his face and he just almost looks right at the camera, even though he doesn't know where the camera is. Um, and, uh, and it is a funny moment, I think, to me and to some sighted people simply because of the context of the scene. Um, so yeah, I don't know if and the scene I'm talking about is when because I don't want to go into too many spoilers again. I don't want to like ruin some of the jokes. But when CJ first comes out to meet Brenda with Joanne, and so if you remember that scene, and he's meeting Anya for the first time, and Joanne and him kind of have this moment stepping over each other. So it's that moment where he kind of slyly looks at the camera, almost to say, wow, did you guys see what she did to me? you know? And so, yeah, it's for me again, it's a different layer of comedy because, well, he doesn't see, like, it's kind of a wink and a nod moment, right? So yeah.
Yeah, it's basically the chef's kiss is what you were looking for there. You know,
Hmm.
you talk a lot about this fourth wall. You said it twice. I still don't understand what that is. So what do you mean by the fourth? What's
Are
the
you
philosophy
familiar?
of?
Okay, are you familiar with Deadpool, the
No,
movie
but
series?
no, but why don't you break it down?
Okay,
Because I think probably when you
yeah,
said it, whether you realize or not, some people in the audience will know what you're talking about, and others will be like, "What fourth wall? What? What?" So let's maybe define some vocab here, maybe.
yeah, yeah. Okay, sure. So when you think of a film in terms of 3D space, we, the audience, are kind of like, the omniscient, viewer. We're watching things happen, and the characters are in their moment of that reality, of whatever the story is. And so to break the fourth wall is for a character to kind of step outside of that reality and acknowledge the audience that's watching them.
Ah, got it. Cool. Okay.
Almost like you're on a stage, you're watching Hamlet, and suddenly Hamlet walks right up to the front of the stage and says something directly to the audience, not in character. It's like, hey, by the way, I'm going to acknowledge you, the audience, that I know you're watching me. Okay, so if that makes sense.
Complete sense. It's like the actor
Hmm.
kind of jumped off the stage and gave someone a flower from their pocket in the audience, like that type of thing.
Right,
Yeah.
and it kind of breaks the reality of the moment. In the context of all of the characters and their interactions, because we are in a documentary style, where you're watching all this stuff happening in real time, but at the same time, what I feel sets our show apart is that we lean heavily into the behind the scenes feel of the show, where we do see the camera crew like all the time. We see the sound guy, maybe something happens, with equipment and different stuff. So they themselves are also playing a role as a character unto itself. So we lean heavily into that aspect. And so, in a way, it feels like you're not only watching the events of the day unfold and CJ's dilemma and getting to know all these characters, but you're also watching a behind the scenes making of the show itself while it's being made. So it's kind of interesting.
I love it. I love it because I'm someone, as you can tell, you won't be surprised to know, as you've sort of probably understood over the years, I'm extremely interested in this acting theater stuff. Like this is
Hmm.
one of my like how do I even put it to you? And I'm sure you'll understand. Kind of like a sick, when you have like a sick kind of twisted fascination with something that's really interesting. That's how I am
Okay.
with that. It's kind of like it kind of like thinking, oh, like that's cool. And then when I saw that, when I saw some of this stuff, I was like, I could have done that. I could easily have been a Kramer in that and stirring stuff up and be really serious and really kind of dark and pessimistic and comical and lovable all at the same
Hmm.
time. That's how I'm painting my character, or it might just be my complete imagination and opinion. But I really can't. I just can't resist. I'm sure you understand that. But as someone who's
Nice.
fascinated by the mechanics of it all, I love
Hmm.
breaking the fourth dimension because I want to see how you guys are making it. I love hearing
Yeah.
voices off camera.
Hmm.
That adds it for me. Now, Gino, I said
Yeah.
adds it for me.
Right.
What I would want to know is, so, you're talking to me now. What other blind people have you been speaking with who are not acting in it, who also have the same interests that I do, similar interests? What other things have they been telling you? Like, have they also had that same positive reaction, or we're going to keep it positive, I remember, that's fine. But what are
Hmm.
some other other interesting reactions from other blind people? Did they also enjoy it as much as I did? Yeah.
Yeah. So by and large, we've been doing focus group testing. We did a screening in Orlando, and by and large, it has been overwhelmingly positive from everyday people in the community, not just blind and low vision, community members, but I do know a lot of people working for some of the commissions, let's say. Um, and other schools like in different parts of the country. And in one particular instance, this friend of mine, she said, "Wow, you nailed my daily life. Like, how did you do this? Like we experience this stuff all the time." just different aspects of, these different classes. Um, so, I mean, that was obviously very, rewarding to know that, okay, I mean, I wanted to treat this community obviously with respect. And I did not want to make fun of them, but you're trying to figure out where are those moments to make people laugh and look at themselves in their daily life and go, oh, wow, that's funny. That happens all the time. And so I did have a lot of those comments, over the last several months, where people definitely saw themselves in these characters. Like you had, mentioned, oh, is this based on this person or this person, somebody, that you might know in the community? And obviously they're not per se, but I think I did a fair amount of research for a long time. And even things that I witnessed myself, kind of coming to these schools. And, and so I think, right now, people that have, let me see, how do I say this? Because this is actually a very specific comment from, someone that I do know, that really likes the pilot and is blind, and said, we have to have a sense of humor about ourselves, right? Because I mean, this is how you break down barriers. This is how you educate people. You just got to do it with humor. And so if you can't laugh at yourself, I mean, then there's no shows worth watching, right? I mean, and stand-up comics do this a lot. They do a lot of self-deprecating humor. They make fun of their families, their kids, their spouse, themselves, and that's why we laugh, because we relate to so much of their experience as well. I mean, the human experience is a shared experience. Now, not every joke's going to land. I mean, you throw 100 jokes, and I've been to lots of comedy shows with, seeing some famous comics where I can tell you maybe 80% of the jokes landed, 20% didn't. They're testing out new material, let's say, right? It happens. But no, by and large, it was very a favorable reception at this point.
Yeah, that's interesting. Well, for me, all of the jokes landed, but I have a huge sense of humor, and you're
Yeah.
absolutely right. I make fun of myself constantly, and that's
Mm.
the only way to survive is you have to be able to
Yeah.
have the courage to laugh at yourself. And I think that's why it's affecting me so much is because
Mm.
I respect and recognize your courage in creating such a relatable and such an endearing and such a sweet and serious thing that
Yeah.
I completely relate to. And I think that's why it's relatable, is because it's important to be able to have that conversation. It's almost like I'm watching a podcast. It's like because we have to
Hmm.
talk. So these are
Right.
things that we all have to get off our chest in the community. And I just think
Yeah.
I think it's a really good idea. As long as you figure out though, and I think the where some people would have a question mark is, well, then if you're writing something, how do you tell in this day and age when the public, if you don't mind me saying, is overly sensitive, in my humblest of opinion, how do you tell what
Hmm.
jokes you can write and how do you tell what jokes you can't? Because as we say in comedy, it's all the reason it's funny is because haha, it's at someone else's expense. So how do you tell? Like, how do you tell what you're really able to get away with?
Well, I mean, well, first of all, I would say you have to you won't know until you test it, right? I mean, um, and as far as what can you get away with, I mean, man, there's so many things inside that question, right? To unpack, and we'd probably be here for a long time. But like you
Sure.
said, I think unfortunately right now we live in a time where everyone is hypersensitive. Everything is politicized. Everything is divisive, and that is something I wanted to avoid 100% with this show,
Sure,
right?
absolutely.
So, and not just because of the diversity of the cast and crew and everything, and how many how many blind performers we have, the message I was trying to convey with the show, which I do feel is a heartfelt message. Um, so I will say this. Um, there have been a few members of the community that and I won't say who any of these people are,
Sure.
because at this point it is a minor amount of people, less than a handful, who I think what is that saying? They're missing the forest through the trees, right? I think they were hypersensitive to some very minor things about the pilot. And their explanation to me was that they were afraid sighted people would be laughing at the wrong thing about their community. And my response to that sentiment is we're not the arbiters of what is funny to society. We are not to dictate in that way, right? Um, yes, you want to make the effort that you're doing things tastefully, right? Um, but just because somebody laughs at something uh, that is funny doesn't mean it's in a mean spirited way or that they're doing it, you know, because it's tasteless, right? I mean, there's a fine line with that. Okay, I don't think anything we did was tasteless. I don't think anything we did,
Absolutely
uh,
not.
and the re- and the reason I'm going to say that is because I don't think any of the cast members would have wanted to participate if that was the case. When they read these characters, when they were on set, everybody was having a blast. Everybody was having a wonderful time. Um, and there are factions in all communities, right? And some people, look, I'm half Indian and Sri Lankan, right? And when I was a
Didn't know.
kid,
Never would have. Never would have known. I can't see you that well, man. Come on, I told you I'm blind. No.
well, so here's the thing, I grew up, uh, I'm a Gen Xer, and I grew up where there was a saying, everything's funny until somebody gets hurt, then it's hilarious. Right?
Precisely.
I mean, that is how I grew up, right? So I remember the first time, and I always felt as a child that I didn't really have a tribe, that I didn't have people that I could relate to growing up in the Midwest, where most of the kids surrounding me were blonde hair, blue eyed, pale skin, European. And I felt like a little bit of an other. Nobody knew what my nationality was. Then I tried to get around the kids that were Indian, and they're like, "Oh, well, where are your family from?" And, "Oh, you don't speak any of the dialect?" And it's like, "Well, no, because my family was very wanting us all to be Americanized." So then I couldn't even like relate to that side of my heritage, right? But I just remember, when I would tell people that I was Indian, there would be these insulting comments like, "Oh, dot or feather," right? Now, because well, what do you mean Indian? Because, do you mean Native American? And it's like, no, Indian from India. And so, but, I don't know. We had a thicker skin when we were kids. You kind of laugh it off, right? I mean, because sometimes people say dumb things. Um, so yeah, I think um, we are living, maybe because of the internet. I don't know exactly why, but we're living in this very hypersensitive, uh, era, where everybody's worried about offending someone, right? And we can't do anything offensive, okay? And I'm sorry, you can't do comedy then. You just can't. There's always going to be somebody who doesn't like a joke, right? And that shouldn't be how we move forward and progress, right? Um, because if we are able to get, a big audience for a show like this, now maybe a certain percentage of them don't find everything funny. But I mean, that's how you're going to educate people. That's how you have those conversations. That's how you break down misconceptions, right? Is through humor.
Yeah, you're so right. Yeah, that's fascinating. Never would have known that. I never would have known it about your heritage at all. But that's interesting. It's also not surprising that you don't speak Tamil and there's many Sinhalese, Tamil,
Yeah,
Bangladeshi Hindi.
Kannada was, yeah,
Yeah,
Hindi. Yeah.
yeah.
My
It's
grandma's family
not at
were
all
Indian
surprising.
Sri
A lot
Lankan.
of yeah. So they probably spoke Tamil, probably. Yeah,
Well,
and
my grandmother, they were Brahmins. So my grandmother, I believe, spoke something like 20 or 30 different dialects. She spoke Tamil, spoke Kannada, Urdu, and Hindi. Like, yeah, I don't even remember all the different dialects that she spoke.
interesting, interesting.
Mhm.
But what I can tell you for what my opinion's worth is what I can tell you is if anyone doesn't want to listen to what I have to say on Aaron's opinion, I say that's fine. Here's my saying.
Mhm.
I say that's fine, no problem. But I'm 100% sure that if you never listen to me, you'll never know what I say. So if someone won't watch your pilot or if someone won't watch your show, you can say that's fine, but just as long as you understand, you're allowed to be
Mhm.
offended and not watch it. But if you don't
Yeah.
watch it, you can't learn about it and you'll never know what we do. And
Mhm.
that's a very subtle thing. But yes,
Yeah.
someone's always not going to like it, but I'll always like it. And
Mhm.
someone's always going to think it's not funny, but I think it's funny. But then again, the things that I think are funny, people pull me aside. They say, Aaron. Now, when you go in public, you're in public. You can't say that out loud. This is America. It's a free country. We have freedom of speech. But no. You can't say that. Can't say that. It's a free country. Right. Right.
Yeah.
Free country, except for the fact that there's 1,000 things you can't say. So I think that's a really free country. But that is the society. I've also learned that that also helps me a little bit when I go to Europe a lot. I'm a French speaker, so if I go to France, I always have to
Nice.
regulate myself and think, okay, I'm in a much more sensitive society where the people are a lot more reserved and you just can't
Mhm.
say all these things, which is why I'm so glad you're including, Olga, is because I think that there's so many jokes about Ukraine right now. There's so many jokes about Australian people. I mean,
Mhm.
you could really let her just spread her wings and fly. And I mean, she could literally like
She,
steal the
yeah,
show. I mean, that could
no,
literally fly the whole thing.
she was amazing. This was her first, professional acting, role, and she brought just so much to every scene that she was in. Just a wonderful, wonderful person. Really brilliant, smart, funny, and no, her and I have talked about I've talked to other cast members as well about this. Is like if we're given the opportunity for one season where we can delve into each of these characters as you do in an ensemble. In a pilot, you have 26 minutes, right? So we can't delve into every single character's backstory, right? But given the opportunity, Olga and I have talked about a lot of funny things that we would like to do that with this character, and she's got a lot of great ideas. She's just very very smart. But yeah, I mean, uh, again, that was a happy accident in the casting process. We had over 10,000 submissions
Ooh la la.
when we put out our casting call right after the strike ended, and narrowing that down was just unbelievably difficult. And we auditioned dozens of low vision and blind actors for every role. And it was just it's hard. Sometimes it's finding a needle in a haystack. Becca and I, we've always embraced this mantra in the blind community of let us play us, right? Um, but it doesn't always work out that way because sometimes, an actor doesn't have a certain, I don't know, like it's an
They
X
don't,
factor,
yeah,
right?
I think I know the way that I would explain it in a very humorous, Kramerish way is not every actor has the, the bingo. You got to have, that's what it is. You got to have the bingo. You got to have the yes.
Yeah,
You got to have
yeah.
that something else that we all intrinsically spiritually know. You got to have the ding, perfect.
Hmm.
And not everybody, and it's nothing personal, not everybody does. The reality is if you interviewed thousands of people for the role and that was only like, I don't know, the people that I saw, well, the overarching reality is most people don't have a ding.
Yeah.
Most people don't have that extra bingo that would really tip you over the edge. So
Hey, I don't have it myself. Okay, I've never wanted to be an actor.
Now that's okay. That surprises me
No,
because
I've
I would
always
think
been
that a
behind the
screen
camera, and
I understand that, but then again, also I would think that a screenwriter would also have that drive, have that extra bug to be the actor themselves, to want to portray something that you write yourself, right? So, but anyway, the
no,
casting. So in case someone wants,
I
yeah,
think it's a
sure.
little bit uncomfortable for me. Like,
Oh, that's interesting.
I have a cameo in the pilot, but I wouldn't want to be more than a cameo in the series, just very randomly. But no, the casting. Back to the casting. I mean, we just really. I think we got lucky, with this cast, because everybody was just so professional, enthusiastic. I mean, they were in love with the material, they were in love with the concept, and everybody every day brought their A game to it. And look, we shot the pilot in 5 days. I got no sleep. And every day I came in and I was so excited just to be around all these people, right? And get to play in this sandbox, for those 5 days. It's my greatest joy in life is to be on set. Um, and we really, we lucked out, from top to bottom. Everybody was really amazing.
So how do you tell when you're casting and you look at all these submissions of all these people? How do you tell who you want really? How does the process of actually narrowing it down work?
Well, I will have to give my wife credit for this because I am a methodical, perfectionist type person. So I was sitting there like clicking on, the headshot and the person's profile, and I'm going to sit there and watch, their demo and look at all their photos. And again, 10,000, how do you get through them? And she was sitting there and I was very stressed. She goes, "What are you doing?" I said, "I'm trying to go through this." And she goes, "Well, how many of you, picked, right? Like that are potential?" And I was like, "Five out of, 1,000, right? Like, I've got five right now." And so, "What do you mean you got five?" Because I was going so slow through it. And she was like, "No, gut instinct. You just look at a photo. Like you can't. There's no time to watch 10,000 demo reels, right? You're just never going to get through it. So that's, I think, the hardest part is sometimes it is just the look that you're after, right? And we had to do that first. And then when, Jamie and I, and my wife, we were going through it, then you kind of narrow it down and you're like, okay, we've got now this down to 100 of, 100 people for each role. We narrow this down further, and then that's where all the callbacks come in, with the auditions, the sides. So no, it was definitely a challenge to get through it. But but no, it was a wonderful experience getting through it. That's for sure.
Yeah, it's incredible. So, how many hours a day do you have to film, and how many hours a day does it take during those 5 days to actually create the whole 26-minute experience?
Well, again, just another way we really got lucky. I mean, we had a lot of we definitely had good pre-production preparation. My line producer and Jamie and my other producers and co-producers. Um, because it is a lot of work, just getting through the preparation of getting the entire right, not just cast, but even the crew. And we just had a brilliant, amazing team. So, is it normal to get a pilot done in under 5 days? Because technically we were under 5 days. That's why the last day we had plenty of time for just a few reshoots and interviews with all the cast. So no, I don't think it's normal. We moved at a very brisk pace, only two or three takes, per scene. Um, we ended up with 44, 45 minutes of actual usable footage. We could have made an hour long pilot if we wanted to. So then whittling it down to 26 minutes was even harder. Um, but yeah, I mean, there's obviously there's regulations on this stuff, because you're working with unions and the Screen Actors Guild, and you have to take scheduled breaks, and you got to follow all the rules and the guidelines, and you don't want to go into overtime. It's just how many departments you have, and next thing you know, even just 1 hour of overtime could add a tremendous amount of cost to the production. Um, so we definitely kept it lean and kept moving. Um, but again, this goes back to like my director of photography. His name is Frank, and he is just so. I'd wanted to work with him for years, and when he read the script, he really was in love with it, and he's just such a pro. I mean, he's worked on over 60 films with some of the top directors and cinematographers in the business, and having what they call a shorthand with somebody where him and I was almost just kind of unspoken, and there was a joke that was happening with us and the camera team where we would do a walkthrough. We're doing what's called blocking, and you're kind of sketching out the scene. Him and I are looking in the camera. The actors are running it through one time, and so many times we would laugh, and he would go, "Oh, I should have had the camera rolling," because it would have been a perfect take. So that was, yeah, that was just really nice to work with people that are at the top of their game every day. From, like I said, the cast, the crew, everybody.
Absolutely. In the podcast business, we say this all the time in podcasting and YouTube too. You always go back and you always say, "Oh, I wish I had done that better. Oh, I wish I woulda, coulda, shoulda." But then,
Yeah.
but then when you look back on it, you look back and you say, "You know what? That was great. I liked what I did anyway." And I think that's
Hmm.
kind of the message. Um, so that's really fascinating. I do have kind of two final questions and then one question for you. So
Okay.
if this thing kind of launches, I know you can't really answer this, but if you were to use your imagination and
Hmm.
paint an image, so where do you see this thing actually going if conditions were not what they are, where would you like this to go? What is a realistic expectation, you think?
Well, so there's a show that was probably another show that was inspiring to me, and that's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. I just love this show. It is so irreverent, just wonderfully funny and not politically correct. I mean, they get away with so much in this show. That show has been going, I think, for 19 years now or something. Like they're on like season 16 or 17 or something. I think they had to take a hiatus. And it's just, multiple Emmy award-winning show. Um, and there is no end in sight, right, with that show just yet. Because it is a concept. They just keep going as long as they want to. I think we have the potential with this show. It's the same, because there's so much that can be done uh, within the blind community with lots of characters and rotating even new characters in, you know. So that would be my biggest hope is that we get that first season, we get co-producers and financiers and investors and a network that says you've got something here, and we want to let you prove it, and we knock it out of the park, and then just it becomes this year after year successful show for a lot of people to enjoy. And the other reason I want that so much is because what this show I think has the potential to do that no other show I think can do is it creates opportunities in the blind community for up and coming low vision blind actors, or a kid right now who's blind but he wants to be a field sound mixer or a boom operator. I mean, because this show is set in the blind community, we can give preference and priority to blind cast and crew, episode by episode by episode, creating a sustainable, show and helping launch people's careers and having them getting mentored by lots of professionals. Um, so that is a big hope for me, of why the show really needs a chance. Um, when you look at other shows, not just in the blind community, but in other spaces, you have what they used to call the token character. It's oh, look, we have a person in a wheelchair in the background. We got that checkbox, right? And that's not what I wanted to do. I don't want a checkbox, where we have one character that fits this one particular demographic. It's like, no, no, no. Let's create something that has sustainability, you know.
Yeah, I actually have some ideas for you. So many ideas for you, a couple huge ones. Um
Hmm.
but yeah, that's all really 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 fascinating for me. I want to see what you say though. I want to see what question you can come up with. So if you can ask
Okay.
me only one more question to really make me
Hmm.
sweat to see if I'm worth my salt as a podcaster.
Mm.
What do you really, 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 really want to know about me? I want to see how deep you can
As
go.
a podcaster,
As a person, as
just
a blind person
just
in the
in related.
community, just a
Hmm.
guy that cares. Because by the way, I just want to come out and say, I'm Aaron's opinion. I support your
Hmm.
message. P.S. I'm really poor and there's absolutely nothing
Yeah.
I can do to help. But I
Yeah.
completely, and I do want to help you, as you can tell. That's why I'm so into this. I would, honest to God, man to man, I would love to be part of this. I truly would. So there's
Hmm.
not, there's, as I say, the first thing we can do is share this with my audience and my network and see what other people think. But I promise you, you join my WhatsApp group, man. If you're in my WhatsApp community, for all the other guests, and you start talking about this, you're definitely gonna have some interest overseas and all over the world. People will want to watch. But so if you can ask me only one question to make me sweat, see if I'm worth my salt as a podcaster, as I like to say,
To
what
make
do
you,
you to
I
really
don't know if this is okay. I don't know if
come
this is
on,
going to
man?
make
Like
you
you're
sweat.
you're the okay. Imagine, because I'm
Yeah.
kind of stretching my imagination because I'm kind of imagine I'm the actor, right? You're the director. You really
Hmm.
want to make me sweat. What do you really want to ask me?
If I want to make you sweat, see, I don't know if this would make you sweat, but um, I do have a question because it is something that I think has come up over the years being around this community. Um, if you could wave a magic wand and fix your sight, would you?
Absolutely not. I love being blind. I love being Aaron Richmond, Aaron, a blind podcaster who happens to be blind, because if I wasn't blind, I wouldn't be able to have Aaron's opinion, the podcast for blind people, where we speak about critical issues.
Nice.
What else could I do? I don't know.
Yeah.
The answer, Gino, is in case you wanted to know what I always wanted to be. This is really, really gets us off a beaten track. I always wanted to be in the military. I had a huge affinity for being a soldier. I always
Hmm.
wished that I was sighted and was a member of the military. That was always something that I
Right.
always, even to this day, I still kind of have hard feelings about that. So what I
Mm.
do is I take that energy into my teaching work, which I do online, and then my podcasting. I say, well, I didn't get that chance, so I'm going to give this opportunity to Gino and the rest of the community. I'm just going to, as you said before, actors, when we come up to you, I'm just going to always give you the best of me, no matter how I
Hmm.
feel. And that's what I believe. You, Gino, if you're talking to Aaron's opinion, you only deserve the best, the absolute best of me. And that's the only promise I can make, because everything else I can't promise. But I promise, if you want to work
Hmm.
with me, you would only get the best, and I will only do my best. But what would I go and have some magical surgery? Absolutely not. No, I love me. I absolutely
Thank you.
there's nobody there's nobody in this entire universe that loves me more than me. Because at the end of the day, if I can't love
Yeah,
myself, then how can I possibly help one person today and a million tomorrow? There you go.
exactly.
There you go.
Yeah,
But
great
it is
answer.
it is a very thank you. It is a very huge topic. It's a huge topic, in the community. A lot of people would say, especially the people with
It is
RP, the RP
well, it's
people who lose their
also,
vision when they're adults. They say, I'd go
mhm,
back to being sighted any day. Yeah.
yeah, but it's also in the deaf community. And,
Hmm.
and the reason I asked that Not that I was trying to make you sweat. It's just because it's a compelling thing because I do see both sides of why somebody would want their vision back or want vision at all if they've never had it. Um, I do get it. I get both sides of it. Um, and that's the whole thing I think that is also different about what we're trying to do with Don't Look Now. There are movies that have been around. Actually, there's a new movie that's coming out, and that is the focus is, oh, if only we could fix this, right? But I have relatives that are autistic. Well, there's no curing it, right? So if
Why
we're going
should
to
we?
be,
Right.
but exactly, but I mean, if we're going to put stories out that are about doctors, how inspiring is this? Trying to,
Oh
cure
yeah.
this.
Uh-huh.
Well, what message does that send to all the people that there is actually no cure, right?
Correct.
Because there are conditions that cannot be cured, whether it's a specific type of blindness or deafness or autism, and I just think that's the wrong message. And that's
Hmm.
why it was so important to me that we have a character introduced in the pilot like Anya, who you're going to see what it is to lose your vision and how she has to overcome that and be a whole person and, find love and happiness.
This is gonna sound like a weird question. I just can't
Hmm.
resist. Did you get
Yeah.
any auditions? She's not an actress, but I want to see if you know who it is. Did you get
Hmm.
any auditions from a blind woman, maybe around my age, who is a Mexican woman out in California who has RP?
I mean, yeah, I would have to look. I mean, it's, this is,
I don't think you did. I
again,
mean,
the
I don't
amount
think
of,
you did. I
so
know. I don't
with
think
the
you
amount
did,
of
but
auditions,
hmm
with the amount of auditions we did,
yeah.
I would have to go, like look back.
Hmm.
It's just not specific enough,
Sure.
because you got to remember, um, in that process, we weren't taking notes of what person's condition was, let's say, right? Like it wasn't a question that we would ever ask, I mean, we did want to know if they identified as being low vision or blind, but unless it came up, in an organic way, we wouldn't have asked, oh, well, what is your condition, right? Unless they wanted to tell us specifically. So we
Sure.
did have people that did tell us, that I am a low vision actor, I am a blind actor, and obviously we wanted to give a certain priority to their auditions first. Um, but yeah, you and I would have to talk off
Off the
video,
record.
and then maybe yeah, and well, then maybe I can look into it and see if I know
No,
what
no,
you're talking
I'm
about.
just purely curious. So then probably, who knows?
Hmm.
But I don't think she ever knew of it. But I just thought of someone that I've interviewed years ago who's not an actress, but someone who has RP, who's a huge person.
Hmm.
But anyway, if you want to tell me, if you want to say, Aaron, we need to talk about this off record, totally fine. Do you want, do you want to hear, may I share with you any of my ideas
Your ideas for?
for your pilot and potential future ideas that I sort of have?
Oh no, that would probably be a longer conversation that I want to have with you personally.
Understood.
Because
Under
yeah.
understood. Because I do have some ideas that, let me tell you something. I have two ideas, and they are fabulous ideas. Oh yeah. It's just an opinion.
And we will talk about
Right.
them. Yeah, let's do it.
Um, absolutely, man. Well, I just wanted to say thank you so much for being so open and so dynamic. About
Oh,
having
thank you.
just such an animated conversation. And this whole thing is just, it's always fascinated me. And I gotta tell, as you can tell, ever since I first met Becca, like you did a few years ago,
Hmm.
I've always had this fascination. I have interviewed, uh, I've interviewed several other actors who are another screenwriter. Well, we'll talk over. But I've interviewed several other people in the industry, and anytime I do, it's just utterly fascinating.
Yeah.
I discovered that, considering that I never took, although as a child, my performing art was flute. I was actually a flutist and a high level, I was going to audition only music camps. And although I
Hmm.
sort of have been in this sort of audition like realm, I never thought I'd be interested in acting. But it turns out now that I ask myself, Aaron, are you interested? Yes, actually, I have to confess, I'm incredibly compelled by it. And overall, to wrap it all up, the thing that really stood out to
Yeah.
me is that, yeah, don't look now. You definitely are not sending the message that we need to cure or fix blindness. And that's what I love,
Hmm.
is because there's too much of that cure it, fix what. Here's the thing. You can't fix stuff in life. If it doesn't go your way, too bad. You can't fix it. There's no fixes.
Hmm.
There's improving. And that's what I try to do in my own life anyway. If someone wants to get in touch with this Geno Marks character, and if you're sighted and if you want to watch the pilot yourself, I did give you my parents' email, by the way. But anyway, they're interested.
Okay.
But so for everybody else who's out there in the audience all over the world, and they probably want to watch the pilot, hey, how do they get in touch with you? What are some good channels for communication?
Yeah. So thank you. First of all, our official website is don'tlooknowtvofficial.com. And we do have a Instagram, which I believe is Don't Look Now Show, and then we have a Facebook page as well. So those were probably the best ways to get in touch with us. I believe the trailer, I believe, is also on YouTube. Our
It
Don't Look
is.
Now YouTube. Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, yes, if you could please, actually, you generally ask this off air, but since it came out, if you could please write up a little paragraph telling us who Geno is, how you got into this, and then include all of those links so that I can find them and so my audience can definitely give you a like.
Absolutely.
That is so, guys, that is so important. If nothing else, even if you don't watch the, could you please just like his Facebook page? They have no idea. When you're not a creator, just could you push that damn like button? It would just be so it would just love you if you just push that button.
I know.
So you could just do that. Just do this one. It's like if you're most people, as we say in the liability business, if you would just do one thing, you would just be doing great. Just do one thing. Push that like button. Just push it and get lost.
Thank you. All right.
Geno Marks, man, you're a tremendous character. I wish you all the
Thank you
best.
so much.
And after I get you connected with more of my audience, I'm sure you'll definitely get some more feedback, and I'll definitely give you some ideas off air and give you some suggestions on other great people who you should contact to make sure that we see Don't Look Now as season one. Season one, we can do. We'll do. I tell you what, I'll credit you for 9 seasons. After that, that's all. They only do 9 seasons. The joke about that.
There we go.
Only 9
Let's
seasons.
just get
Only 9 lives. All right.
All
Okay,
right.
well, absolutely. No, good heavens. Anyway, well, thank you so much, Geno. Do you know how I end an episode of Aaron's Opinion?
I did listen to it one time, but go ahead and do the ending.
Absolutely. So thank you so much for joining us. And as we say on Aaron's Opinion, keep podcasting, be well, everybody, and we will certainly be back next time. So as we say on the podcast, help one person today, help 1 million people tomorrow.